Daisy Fresh wasn't born in a palace. It was born in an abandoned laundromat in the middle of nowhere. This is the story of how a bunch of broke, hungry, and forgotten fighters clawed their way from total obscurity to the very top of the sport. This is the complete story of their impossible wins, the absolute killers they created, and the shocking betrayals that almost tore the whole thing apart. The founding myth, a mad scientist in a laundromat. To understand the betrayal, you first have to understand what was being betrayed. Mount Vernon, Illinois. Population under 15,000. It's a quiet, blue-collar town where football is everything, and a world-class martial arts gym sounds like a crazy fantasy. But for a story this wild to even get started, you need a catalyst, right? One person with an obsession so powerful it just bends reality around them. For Daisy Fresh, that person is Heath Pedigo. Heath was an athlete from day one, but everything changed for him in November 1993. He and his brother Randy sat down to watch the first ever UFC, and just like millions of other people, they were mesmerized by this skinny Brazilian guy in his pajamas named Royce Gracie, who was just dismantling men twice his size with this art they called JiuJitsu. But while other people just saw a crazy fight, Heath saw a science. His brother Randy started buying every grainy VHS tape of no-holds-barred fights he could find. And in their living room, the Pedigo brothers became students of the tape. They'd watch, rewind, and copy every move they saw, filling up notebooks. This wasn't just a hobby. He knew right then jiu-jitsu was his life. So for years, Heath just chases the knowledge.
The closest jiu-jitsu spot was over in St. Louis. My brother and I started in like 1994, 95. So Rodrigo Vaghi, he's over in St. Louis, and I went and just trained with him, and I did all my belts from white to black through him. Once I got my blue belt, Rodrigo worked out a deal with me. I got to move back to Mount Vernon, and I started Pedigo Submission Fighting here.
But the pull of home was too strong. In 2011, Heath moves back to Mount Vernon to do something that sounds impossible: open his own jiu-jitsu gym. He had no money for a fancy building. What he found was this derelict laundromat that had been empty for a decade. Rent was $500 a month, and hanging out front was a faded, peeling sign that said Daisy Fresh. Heath never took it down. He actually leaned into it. It was part of his hometown. So Pedigo Submission Fighting was born, but the world would come to know it by the name on that sign. For a long time, people from town would just wander in with their laundry baskets, only to find a bunch of guys trying to choke each other out on mats. The first few years were rough. The gym was freezing in the winter and boiling in the summer, and it was just a small group of local kids and tough guys who bought into what Heath was building. The grind and the rise, forging killers on the mats. The whole philosophy at Daisy Fresh was simple, like brutally simple. It was a phrase Heath Pedigo repeated constantly: you compete how you train. And okay, the training at Daisy Fresh was a special kind of hell. It wasn't about fancy moves or relaxed rolling. It was about pressure, pace, and an intensity designed to absolutely break you. Every single roll was a fight. There were no easy days. This place became a magnet for a certain kind of person: the outcast, the drifter, the kid with a chip on his shoulder with nowhere else to go. They came from all over with no money, so they just lived in the gym. They slept on the same mats they bled on. A dozen guys crammed into the laundromat, with more of them sleeping in sheds or their cars outside, their lives revolving entirely around training. They had little money, sharing gis and cooking on a hot plate, but they were rich in ambition. This was the hobo jiu-jitsu lifestyle, a stark contrast to the polished, well-funded mega gyms. It was real, it was raw. One of the first guys to really live this was Andrew Wiltse. Heath saw his talent and made him a simple deal: give me 1 year of 100% dedication. Wiltse's first taste of the gym was violent. He remembers being a wild man, just getting tapped out over and over. In one of his first rolls, a white belt tapped him 5 times in 2 minutes. A frustrated Wiltse asked Heath what he was doing wrong. Heath's answer was simple: you're not breaking the grips. That night, Heath came back to the gym at 3 a.m. and found Andrew by himself just drilling grip breaks. That was the price you had to pay. The conditions were awful. Andrew Wiltse talked about having to sleep in a full snowmobile suit and gloves just to stay warm. The team was so broke, they ran out of money for toilet paper and had to steal it from a local McDonald's. But this is the thing about that kind of hardship. It forged a bond that was basically unbreakable. They weren't just a team, they were a brotherhood. And it started to work. First, they dominated local tournaments. Then they aimed for the biggest stage in the sport. They'd roll up to the Pan Ams or Worlds, this unknown team from Illinois, and nobody knew what to do with them. Their style was just different, aggressive, heavy on wrestling, and completely relentless. The established powers of the sport just scoffed. When Daisy Fresh won the team trophy in the novice division at the Pan Ams in 2017, the critics were like, oh man, they're winning white belt shit. But here's what Heath understood. Today's white belt champions are tomorrow's black belt world champions. He was building an army one belt at a time. Pretty soon, his blue belts were killers. Then the purple belts started winning everything. If you saw Pedigo Submission Fighting on the bracket, you knew you were in for a war. And then the whole world started to notice. Guys like Jacob the Hillbilly Hammer Couch, this powerhouse from Kentucky, became a huge fan favorite. Michael Pixley, a star college wrestler, came to Daisy Fresh and won the No-Gi Worlds as a blue belt. A blue belt. The team was now placing in the top 10 at the No-Gi Worlds, something that should have been impossible for a gym like theirs. And at the center of it all was Andrew Wiltse. He became the poster boy for the whole system, tearing through the colored belts and winning an incredible number of major titles, including multiple world and Pan American championships. He was the kid from the laundromat who was now beating the best guys from the most famous gyms in the world. Then, in 2020, Flow Grappling released a documentary series called Daisy Fresh, an American Jiu-Jitsu story, and it turned the team into a global phenomenon. The series showed the raw, real story, the brotherhood, the terrible living conditions, and Heath's insane coaching style. The world was hooked. The boys from the laundromat had made it. But with all that fame came new problems, and the success that brought them all together was about to threaten to rip them apart. The peak and the fracture, success, betrayal, and the poison of fame. Okay, so the Flow Grappling series was good and it was bad. The good is it brought them fame, sponsorships, and tons of new talent. They finally moved into a brand new, massive facility. The iconic Daisy Fresh sign from the laundromat fell down, which was kind of the perfect symbol for the end of that era. On the surface, it was perfect. Daisy Fresh was a powerhouse, but underneath, things were starting to crack. The pressure of fame, money, and social media started to poison the brotherhood that had been their biggest weapon. The biggest crack involved their biggest star, Andrew Wiltse. So according to Wiltse, he starts getting phased out. He claimed he wasn't getting invited on team trips, wasn't told about tournaments, and was being cut out of the team's YouTube videos, even though he was at the gym every single day. And the reason for all this, at least in his words, was maybe the stupidest reason of all. People were upset that me and Bird had our own YouTube channel, Wiltse said. They thought we were competing for views or something silly, but super harmful. It all blew up when the brothers were told they couldn't film their own videos in the gym anymore. The message was clear. You're either with the team's brand or you're an enemy. This whole thing was a symptom of a bigger change in the gym's culture. Wiltse said that the older, more level-headed guys who used to keep everyone in check were gone. Daisy Fresh was very different when I started, he said. There was a bunch of older members that were incredibly intelligent and reasonable. Those people aren't really there anymore. But, like in any big blow-up, there's another side to the story. The drama went public. and it got messy. Another Daisy Fresh original posted on social media with a completely different reason for the split, claiming a deep personal betrayal that had nothing to do with YouTube and everything to do with broken trust in their inner circle. The real truth is probably somewhere in the middle of all that. It's a classic story, really. How does a team built on pure loyalty handle it when every athlete is now also their own brand? The family that was built in a freezing cold laundromat was having a hard time surviving success. Wiltse's life took a tough turn after that. He got into public fights with other BJJ figures and a legal battle with BJJ fanatics. In late 2024, his brother revealed Andrew was having a severe mental health crisis. It was a tragic chapter for a guy who was once on top of the world. He admitted there were people at the gym he now hated with a very justified, fiery passion. The dream had turned into a nightmare. The underdog story had reached its messy, heartbreaking peak. The boys from the laundromat had conquered the world, but in the process, they started conquering each other. The legacy more than a laundromat. So yeah, a team, just like a family, can fall apart. People go their separate ways, but a legacy? That's a different story. The drama could never erase what Pedigo Submission Fighting did, or how much they changed the sport. The legacy of Daisy Fresh is, first of all, proof that your zip code doesn't determine your destiny. They showed everyone that you don't need to be in San Diego or Sao Paulo to build world champions. You can do it in a small town in the middle of America. You can do it with pure grit and a work ethic so insane that it either makes you a champion or spits you out. Heath Pedigo's goal was always to win a black belt world title, and in 2021, that dream came true. One of his first students, Derek Featherstone, won the no-gi worlds at black belt. The factory is still running. In July 2025, Heath promoted two more of his original guys, Alejandro Weiner and Jacob Spatch Brooks, to black belt, and today they're not the underdogs anymore. They were invited to be one of the elite teams at the Craig Jones Invitational 2, with a roster of killers like Dante Leon and Jacob Couch. This isn't some feel-good story anymore. They are the establishment. And what about the guys at the center of the storm? Heath Pedigo is still the coach, still steering the ship, still chasing titles. The team that's still there is a family loyal to him and the culture he created. Andrew Wiltse, after a really dark period, is starting to rebuild. In early 2025, he started a new YouTube channel back to sharing his incredible knowledge of jiu-jitsu. His path is a separate one now. The story of Daisy Fresh is more than just winning. It's a raw, complicated, and deeply American story. It's about a group of forgotten kids in a forgotten town who found a purpose in a rundown laundromat. They showed the world that heart can be worth more than money, and that a team can become a legend even if it can't last forever. The laundromat is empty now, but the spirit that was born there, that pressure, that grit, that will to win, is now a permanent part of jiu-jitsu, and that's a legacy that will never get washed away. So what do you guys think is the most important part of their legacy? Was it the underdog wins or the hard lessons they learned from all the conflict? Let us know in the comments.